Hey guys, welcome back to today's video. Today is Sunday, October 16th, 2022, and today we are going to be talking about why the Republican Party will likely win control of the House of Representatives from the Democratic Party. On your screen right now, we are taking a look at 538's election forecast, in which the Republican Party has a 71% chance at victory to the Democratic Party's 29%. And for a long time this campaign season, there have been many possibilities floated that Democrats might actually shock the country and win back, or maintain, control of the House of Representatives. But the problem lies that the House majority for the Democratic Party is so exceptionally thin. And when I say that, I mean it. This is the narrowest House majority in the entirety of the 21st century, and it's not good news for the Democratic Party because in the last election, they won the popular vote by about 3.5%, yet lost 12 seats on the overall net, with 15 seats going from blue to red. The Republican Party has made it their main priority in many fronts to actually win control of the House. The Senate was never really going to be the easiest task for the GOP, and as the Senate odds now prove, that is just very much maintaining itself right now in terms of the Democratic Party's expectation to actually have a viable shot at winning the Senate. But the House, on the other hand, while Democrats still do have a technically viable shot, they are by no means close to where they need to be in order to retain control of the House, or at least for us to be confident that they might do so as well. The Democrats at 29% puts the Democrats in a position where, if I was to put money on it today, I would undoubtedly have the GOP winning. When Joe Biden won the election and the Democrats maintained control of the House by such a narrow amount, it became clear that in 2022, regardless of President Biden's approval rating, the House was going to go. And that's the way that I've been looking at it over the past couple of months. In fact, the way that I've looked at it since the 2020 election. At not one point in time did I ever have the Democratic Party realistically winning control of the House. I thought there was a possibility that they might be able to continue their upward trend by the time we reached the election, potentially at that point in time when Democrats were hovering around a 32% chance of victory in the House of Representatives, that if that trend was to continue, and if it did, we would be around 43% for the Democrats on Election Day. But the problem for the Democratic Party is that it actually has started to reverse on itself. Democrats are no longer gaining and gaining and gaining. In fact, they are at a lower chance of victory in the House than they were on September 23rd, when they are at 32%. Today, they're at 29%. And the forecast odds on PredictIt, which is a political betting market, really haven't changed that much either, though Democrats peaked at about a 30 cents for a yes share, thus translating to a roughly one-third shot at winning control of the House. Today, they're at 17 cents and 18 cents, which is not as good as where they were previously. But it makes a lot of sense. You see, the House being so narrow meant that the Republican Party truly only needed a marginal improvement from the 2020 election. The Democrats won the popular vote again by 3.5% on the congressional level, or around 3% actually, not 3.5%, but on the presidential level by 4.5%. Joe Biden won 8 million more votes than President Donald Trump. Yet that translated to just 222 seats for the Democratic Party to the Republican Party's 213. For more historical context, the Democrats won back control of the House of Representatives back in 2018. That was a pretty substantial victory, but it was still not the largest that Democrats had this entire century, or at least the 21st century, about 22 years now. The Republicans, on the other hand, have enjoyed majorities significantly larger than where Democrats are today. In 2016, Republicans were at 241. Democrats today, to remind you, are at 222. If Republicans lost control of the House, being at 241, to now at 200 between 2016 and 2018, well, that tells you that House majorities absolutely can flip. But Democrats have lost even more substantial House majorities. I'm reminded often of the 2008 presidential election, when the Democratic Party coincided in that election by winning 257 seats in the House of Representatives. You heard that correctly, 257. States such as West Virginia, Mississippi, Arkansas were safe blue in that regard. Idaho elected their Democrat in the 1st Congressional District. Democrats won in North and South Dakota. They had the majority of seats in Arizona, Nevada, West Virginia, Ohio, Indiana. Ohio took a big turn for the worse away from Democrats. From 2008 to 2012, take a look at this difference. Take a look at that. Absolutely astronomical in terms of the change. But it wasn't just there. It was all across the nation that the American public turned away from the Democrats. And I think this is something that we could very much see similar happen in 2022 in a way that is not going to be nearly as favorable for the National Democratic Party as it once was. Looking at the change between 2008 and 2010, this was a 63-seat pickup for the GOP. 63 seats in a way that had never been seen before for the Republican Party in decades. The largest advantage for an opposing party, I think, since the 1940s. And that was with a national environment where President Obama was disapproved of by about an overall net 5 points. So a 63-seat pickup, with overall being at a net -5, when today President Biden stands at a -10, I would argue that while we aren't going to see something similar to 2010, that's the reasoning behind this foregone conclusion that Republicans do, in fact, win control of the House of Representatives. It has become increasingly more apparent as well as we've looked at practically every indicator thus far, besides special elections, which I do want to touch point on in just a moment. But I think looking at the generic ballot as well, though Democrats now lead nationally, it's not to the same extent that it was in 2020, when they barely won control of the House. It's not to the same extent that it was in 2018, when Democrats won control of the House. Looking at 2018, looking at 2020 and 2022, there are very clear drop-offs. Democrats are performing 7 points worse than 2018 and 6 points worse than 2020. And just knowing how narrow that House majority was, it tells me again that all the GOP needs is a minor improvement, and they have a significant improvement at that. And the 538 forecast doesn't exactly shine that much positive light on the generic ballot polling data because their expected popular vote margin has the GOP winning by about 3 points. Winning by about 3 points means Democrats have no chance at retaining control of the House, in addition to the fact that if this was to be a truly representative democracy, the House of Representatives should never go to the opposing party when the opposition is winning the popular vote. In this case, if Republicans win the popular vote, Democrats should realistically have no chance at winning control of the House. But I still think that the one thing that has really changed my mind on a lot of these elections are the special elections that have been occurring up across the nation. Take a look at Nebraska's 1st Congressional District. I will show you that actually as we take a look because it is interesting. It's fascinating, to say the least, looking at how some of these trends have moved away from the GOP despite everything else moving in favor of them. This is the district I'm talking about. Nebraska's 1st Congressional District. It was the first election following the Dobbs decision when Democrats lost by about 5 points. The interesting thing about this district is that Trump won it by double digits, so for a Democrat to only lose by about 5, it became questionable about whether or not the nation was shifting towards Democrats relative to 2020. But then we said, okay, maybe this is a fluke. Maybe this is just something that happened because Patty Panting Brooks was endorsed by the Republican governor's wife. Maybe because she had received a lot of endorsements, she had been able to campaign in rural areas the way Democrats hadn't previously. But then Minnesota's 1st district happened. There was a special election, and the Democrats only lost by about 4 points. Another Republican district that went to Donald Trump by double digits as well. So you're seeing an improvement not only in Nebraska, you're seeing an improvement also in Minnesota, but then came New York's 19th, when Pat Ryan won against the Republican Mark Molinaro, who out-fundraised the Democrat, was expected to win in practically every regard, and this is a district that Biden only won by 2. And the Democrats, additionally, similar to Minnesota and Nebraska, outperformed it. And then came New York's 23rd, another district where you have the GOP doing worse than they did in 2020. Another Trump plus double-digit district that the Democratic Party only lost by 6 points. And then came Alaska. Alaska at large, in which Mary Peltola, the Democrat, flipped the district for the first time since 1972. So all of that combined together tells me that the Democratic Party was doing better than 2020. But I can't read too deep into special elections because I know for a fact that truly and honestly speaking, Republicans will win control of the House. And that's why I've been so confident in it. Special elections are good indicators, but they're not everything. And I don't think we should be putting that much weight into it. And I think Democrats on every part of this country should be bracing for an imminent House defeat. It's not to say that they don't have a fighting chance, but we are 3 weeks out from the election, and the trends have turned away from the National Democrats. The improvements that they had have stopped, in fact, reverted. Not to the same extent, but definitely have moved away from them as the chances have gotten worse. The generic ballot hasn't improved. In fact, it has also gotten worse. The fact Democrats are even leading on the generic ballot is a miracle. Republicans led for 9 consecutive months until mid-August, so it's definitely a big improvement for National Democrats. But on that same front, I say that regardless, a 1-point lead is not at all comparable to where it was in 2020, or 2018. And it's not anything that I, as someone who looks at this from an analytical point of view, could reasonably argue that Democrats have a pretty good chance at winning control of the House. They have a fighting chance, one that will take a lot of changing over the next 3 weeks in order to happen, but personally, I do not think that it will. Right now, everyone is betting against the National Democrats, and I also will say that it really just isn't that difficult to find 4 seats that Republicans have. One major factor that we really haven't talked about at all during the entirety of this video that is also extremely important to the House is redistricting. Looking at the old congressional map versus the new ones, you really don't see that much changing in terms of red and blue, and that's not good for Democrats. Republicans started out in the old maps with about 52 competitive Republican districts and 156 safe Republican districts. That's 212 Republican districts on a baseline. Democrats, on the other hand, had 148 safe Democratic districts and 33 competitive Democratic districts. That's 212 to 181. That means Republicans on a baseline are winning 212 seats in a neutral year. The new maps, on the other hand, have actually seen improvements for the Republican Party in terms of safe seats. Republicans went from 156 and now are at 169. Republicans were at about 56 competitive districts. Today they're at 39, which is a decrease not because Democrats are taking districts from them, but rather because Republicans shored up their competitive districts. Democrats, on the other hand, saw the reverse happen. Less solid Democratic districts, more competitive Democratic districts, but overall Democrats have made somewhat minor improvements to 187 instead of 181. Republicans decreased from 212 to 208. But just looking at our map here, really, what is the difference between the old and the new? And honestly, there isn't that much. Republicans being at 208 means that on the baseline, they are more than likely going to bring themselves super close to the majority. Looking at 2018, what type of map brought this? What type of national environment brought Democrats to 235 and Republicans to 200? It was Democrats winning nationally by 8 points. 2016, on the other hand, Republicans won the national popular vote by 1 point, yet had 241 seats to the Democratic Party's 194. Why? Gerrymandering. The Republican Party essentially has outflanked the Democratic Party in more ways than one, but specifically and most importantly in congressional redistricting. There's a lot more that needs to be discussed than can be discussed in this video, but we've been talking about it as we went state by state as new maps were finalized. But you take a look at states, for instance, such as, let's say, Indiana. Right, we have a former congressional district that was competitive that we talked about 2 years ago, if you watch my channel then. We talked about Indiana's 5th district that was competitive under the old map. The Republicans had a reasonable chance of victory, but still, Democrats fought for it. Republicans, we practically knew were going to win it, but it had a partisan leaning of Republican plus 8. Then the Republicans got scared. They saw that it was competitive back in 2020, and they shorted up this time around. Now it's Republican plus 22. You've also seen Democrats lose ground when it comes down to congressional redistricting. For instance, in Maryland, you can see here, this is my home state, Democrats absolutely gerrymandered this map into oblivion. And, that's just the way that things happen in this country. It's not necessarily democratic, but it also is something that we can see. But just look at some of these districts, right? Look at the way that they are drawn. They are drawn intentionally to make them all Democratic seats. And now this new map, because a judge ruled that you cannot gerrymander it to the same extent that it was previously or to what the Democrats actually tried to propose, what you found was that the map actually has now lost a seat for the Democrats. And Republicans have a reasonable chance in an exceptional wave year like 2010, like 2014, in some of these other districts. This is what has been the case practically everywhere across this nation. And Republicans have shored up their own districts in states such as Texas. Texas went from having 8 competitive districts to 2. 8 to 2, and Republicans went from having just, what is this number here, 14 solid Republican districts to now they have 23. Republicans currently hold them because they got lucky in the last election, but they practically guaranteed their re-election for the next 10 years. And you know what happens in 10 years from now? Redistricting again, and they'll just repeat the process by drawing the lines differently. So altogether, nothing really is telling me beyond special elections that Democrats are maintaining control of the House. That's the problem that lies fundamentally for the National Democrats. I think at some point in time in future elections, they have a fighting chance, but in 2022, I would say, as of now, it's a foregone conclusion that Democrats will more than likely lose control of the House, but the Senate, on the other hand, is a bit more complicated, and Democrats are favored there, but reasonably, I could see Republicans winning both chambers. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Make sure to comment down suggestions below. Subscribe on the left if you haven't already, and check out my Instagram and Twitter. At the bottom left of the screen, there's also a Discord server for you to go ahead and join. On the screen, there's a video you can watch, and then a playlist for my 2022 House election analysis videos. Again, thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you all later today.